are these people?
Everybody knows. Now, the theme song's missing this week because we have no reef, but it's definitely a fuck Israel night. So, we're going to start with Assal Rod, who said, Miss Rachel, share the artwork of a little girl in Gaza. Quote, I draw houses because I don't have one. Just a dream with windows and a door. A place where I can sleep without fear. So, fuck Israel. Fuck the U.S., fuck the UK for all that. So we're going to start right there. Making little girls dream for a house with windows. Just basic shelter. Because bombs are dropping nonstop. Now, I'm going to read this story from Anti-War. Sarah Neumann, I'm not familiar with, but she talked about the Israel lobby and the engineered famine in Gaza. Yes, it is 100% engineered. I have like a dozen different little portions to this fuck Israel segment, so strap in, guys. It's going to be a while. So it's a little hard to read, but I've got to do it. Amid one of the most severe humanitarian crises of the century, the gap between the value-driven rhetoric of American foreign policy and the realities on the ground is becoming increasingly apparent. This chasm is deepened by reports of child malnutrition, which we've been talking about for months and months and months, images of long queues for water and bread, and news of halted aid convoys revealing the complex relationship between power and narrative building in Washington. In recent months, as food insecurity has intensified and warnings of famine in parts of Gaza have grown, how have they intensified? Why have they intensified? The tone of criticism in the American capital has shifted. Phrases that once cautiously spoke of the unintended consequences of war have given way to more explicit statements about deliberate obstacles to humanitarian aid. Because, again, we've been talking about it forever now. Too long. This change is not a simple difference in expression, but a sign of the erosion of a long-standing pattern of organized influence that has shadowed decision-making for years. Very sugar-coated, you know? The price of this pattern is being paid today, first by the people of Gaza, agreed, and second, by the credibility and long global standing of the United States. Again. At the core of this shift lies a clear reality. When access to basic necessities of life, such as food, water, medicine, and fuel, is regulated based on military and political considerations, one can no longer speak of inevitable consequences of war. This is the point where political and legal responsibility begins. Nuremberg trials again. In this context, the shift in the approach and the language of some members of Congress takes on a significance that transcends daily partisan disputes. Representatives who for years considered support for the ally a self-evident principle requiring no justification now speak about the relationship between security and ethics, referencing legitimate leverage and specific human conditions. Sounds like mental fucking gymnastics. This change signifies a quiet yet tangible transition of the American legislative body from its long-standing self-censorship. Although this transformation is not uniform or universal by any means, it is transforming the language used to describe the crisis as much as it is changing the American political landscape. Technical reports on food insecurity indicators, frequent news of blocked humanitarian aid, and medical testimonies about malnutrition collectively paint a new picture of the crisis. I don't know how it could be new because it's been ongoing for years. Like literally, they've been doing this specific thing since March. So again, this isn't new. This is 6 months plus in the making, 210 days if you look at the graphic posted by Paula Iacella over on Facebook. Okay, one in which neutral phrases are no longer effective. Yeah, I wonder why, because you're perpetrating a fucking genocide. Notice the words genocide, starvation, malnutrition. This is very soft-coded, glad-handed. This is namby-pamby bullshit right here. All right? When women and children face the risk of death, no, they are facing death. Whether they stay in shelters and starve or venture out to find water and food. When the distribution of aid is governed not by need and vulnerability, but by policies of collective punishment. And when restrictions become a recurring pattern, the legal and political mind is forced to reassess the situation. Well, that's very generous of you. And how very studious and collegiate and academic of you. While people are fucking dying and starving. What's happening is no longer merely the result of uncontrolled factors, but the product of design mechanisms. Yes, this is not nearly angry enough. The link between these mechanisms and political support in Washington is the point where the discussion of famine becomes tied to the issue of American sovereignty and collective conscience. The role of the Israel lobby extends beyond financial matters and stems from a unique combination of ideological synergy. That's anti-Muslim rhetoric. Structural access to legislative centers and the ability to redefine the boundaries of permissible discourse. Why does the Israel lobby have any say in the U.S. fucking discourse? 3 main pillars, neoconservative networks, Christian Zionist movements, and professional lobbying organizations have built a model of support for the ally over decades that even defines what moderation is. In this model, criticism of policy quickly morphs into criticism of identity, questioning the prioritization of humanitarian aid over military operations is reduced to a test of party loyalty. And attempts at ethical assessment are marginalized through labeling. This is like trying to reach shitlibs, it seems like to me. Or even, staunch conservatives who think that they're above all of it. And they're not. They're not. The result of this process is the erosion of a discursive space that once allowed for disagreement based on data and logic. This space has gradually shifted from policymaking to narrative management. We talk about narrative management every week on this show. When this narrative management coincides with the control of humanitarian access, it carries a practical message. Propaganda! Famine is engineered not only in warehouses, but also in the realm of meaning. Again, the abstract, collegiate, professorial bullshit here is just thick. All right? Vocabulary is softened to conceal the harshness of suffering. You mean like what this whole fucking article is? And images are presented in a way that pushes fundamental questions out of the spotlight. There are no images in this article, by the way. I love anti-war, but damn. American public opinion, however, shows a different direction. Slowly, but steadily. Because corporate media keeps brainwashing people into the opposite belief. Polls indicating declining support for the continuation of war, all right, even with temporary fluctuations. Wow, my head's about to explode. Point to a strengthening desire to end the current situation. I would hope so. Yes, stop murdering babies. Stop murdering unarmed women and children that don't even have a fucking place to live, to eat, that aren't getting food or water or baby food, like formula, nothing. Babies are dying. They are from malnutrition. And yes, they say that, but they're also dying because they can't get penicillin. And wow. They don't talk about anything in this article. Like the sugar coating, this glazing is infuriating. Voter preferences are leaning towards a ceasefire and unrestricted access to humanitarian aid. You think it should lean that way? Well, I wonder why they aren't. Yeah, way to go. Thanks for that. Really appreciate that. Are you fucking kidding me? All right. In this mirror, the gap between official language and public sentiment becomes more apparent. Yes, they're fucking lying to you and everybody sees it. Like, I've got to decode this whole fucking article? This is terrible. All right, I'm done. I'm punching out. I can't take it. I quit. I got too much other shit I want to yell about. Like this one. Let's get to some real language from another journalist called The Dissident, who is an INN co-founder. All right. The Israeli government admits that Israel's plan is to make Gaza and the West Bank uninhabitable. Thanks for that. And the Likud government official admitted that Israel's plan is ethnic cleansing. And I saw a funny tweet that at the UN this week, when everybody got up, when Bibi walked to the podium, it said that he ethnically cleanses every room he walks into, which is funny. But also not, because look at that. Fuck that guy and fuck Israel. Gila Gamliel, the science and technology minister for the current Israeli Likud government, admitted that Israel's goal in Gaza and the West Bank is ethnic cleansing of its Palestinian population. While people here deny everything that's being said and done on Israeli television, this is on the Channel 12 show Meet the Press. They deny this shit here all the time while people are going on Israeli TV and saying, no, that's exactly what's going on. All right. We will make the Gaza Strip uninhabitable until the population leaves, and the same thing will happen in the West Bank. This shocking admission from an Israeli government official shows that Israel's real intention behind the genocide in Gaza is not to release hostages or to fight Hamas, but to make Gaza unlivable for Palestinians in order to force ethnic cleansing and make way for Israeli annexation, which is something they plan on repeating in the West Bank. And I have an article about that next. This is a plan that Benjamin Netanyahu, aka Milikowski, openly unveiled at the UN weeks before October 7th, the one where he showed the map where there was no Gaza and no West Bank. It was all Israel. All right. Israel apparently allowed the Gaza prison break from Hamas weeks later to happen in order to carry out this already designed plan. That's alleged. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported that Chaim Cohen, the IDF colonel who approved the Nova Music Festival outside of the Gaza border, quote, opted not to boost security after visiting Nova 1 hour before the Hamas massacre, quote unquote, on October 7th, and did not cancel or disperse the festival, despite the fact that he had received intelligence that the breakout was about to happen. Shalom Shetrit, who's one of the IDF watchguards during October 7th, also testified that at 5 a.m. on October 7th, quote, an order was given that there would be no patrols in the fence until 9 a.m., which is weird, unquote, which he said was never given on any other day because, quote, there are no mornings in which there are no patrols on the fence because you're in an operational battalion and that is part of the matter, unquote. So they pulled security that morning. They sent somebody to the festival 1 hour before, knew it was supposed to happen, and didn't cancel it. After the October 7th breakout, Israel created an atrocity propaganda version of what actually happened, including fabricated claims of mass rapes, beheaded babies, and covering up the fact that the IDF, using the Hannibal Directive, killed many of their own people to prevent them from being taken hostage. We've covered that on this show. Okay, we've damn it. No. I just rebooted my internet too. What the fuck? Okay, I think we're back. Okay. I just rebooted my internet right before the stream too. This is weird. I swear, the minute I start talking about Israel, look what happens every fucking week. All right. So, using this propaganda as justification, Israel carried out the exact policy that Gila Gamliel admitted to, making Gaza unlivable for its Palestinian population in order to carry out ethnic cleansing. That's what's happening. The UN Human Rights Council's recent inquiry into Israel's genocide in Gaza documented that the Israeli genocide in Gaza resulted in, quote, 60,368 destroyed structures. Okay. Total again of, we talked about this last week, 170,000 structures have been destroyed. 170,000 structures have been destroyed in Gaza. In that little 25-mile strip that's 2 miles wide. Furthermore, the report noted that there is an estimated total of 50 million tons of debris in Gaza as of December 1st, 2024. And they've been dropping bombs just about every day since, with the exception of the bullshit ceasefire that didn't really ever cease fire. I think they might have stopped dropping bombs for about 6 weeks. Well, right after Trump became president. The report also noted the widespread destruction of residential complexes and entire neighborhoods in the Gaza Strip, with people living in them while they dropped them too, including agricultural lands, public facilities, religious and cultural sites, schools, universities, and hospitals. Basically everything, the entire infrastructure. It's noted that Israel systematically targeted and destroyed institutions such as schools and hospitals needed for the maintenance of Palestinian society in Gaza, documenting that Israel has effectively destroyed the education system intentionally, with significant detrimental long-term repercussions for children and youth in Gaza, the ones that have their limbs, and even the ones who don't. But, the number of amputated children record, thanks to Israel, fuck Israel for that too, right? For the identity of Palestinian people as a group. Again, they're trying to erase them. Adding that Israeli attacks have caused damage to more than 70% of the school buildings in Gaza, creating conditions where education for children has been made impossible by design. All right. And there's just numbers upon numbers upon numbers here with these reports. Internal IDF data has shown that at least 83% of the people killed in Gaza by the IDF have been civilians. That's their own data showing that. They're admitting that they are committing war crimes, genocide, daily. 83% civilian rate. And yet, an Israeli will turn to you and go, October 7th. Really? 83% of people. And how many of those people that were at the Nova Festival, again, which we now know was not moved, but could have been, or canceled, how many of them were IDF reserves again? Yeah, I thought so. Okay, another IDF soldier, all right, told Haaretz that this thing called killing innocent people, it's been normalized. We were constantly told there are no non-combatants in Gaza, and apparently that message sank in among the troops. Yeah, it sure fucking did. This genocidal rhetoric came from the very top of the Israeli government. Again, these are all the receipts compiled into one spot. And now Gila Gamliel admits outright that Israel's goal all along has been to make Gaza uninhabitable for the forcible removal of its Palestinian population and the Christian population, by the way, too. 10% of Gaza were Christians. And that Israel will continue this genocidal policy in the West Bank to further the Greater Israel Project, which, again, I wrote an article about why it should never be allowed to exist and continue, and why Israel should be decertified as a state. Check that out at indiemediatoday.com. And here's what they're talking about. Again, that namby-pamby anti-war article. Here's a real outlet. And again, anti-war does great stuff, but man, that article just really pissed me off. But this one from Mondoweiss, no medicine, no beds, no food or water inside Gaza City's main hospital. And we know that right now that's inside Al-Shifa Hospital, which is getting bombed continuously. All right, it's one of the few places that people are actually getting treatment. And of course, we know that Israel's murdering doctors and nurses, and they have to not wear their uniforms when they leave. And yes, I'm going to talk about the Flotilla, Steve Gill. Okay. Yes, it's trending. We're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about Italy and what happened in Italy. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. I got a long segment here to talk about this, but I want to talk about the fact that right now, again, Israel is starving this entire population because they're controlling everything going in or out. And don't gaslight me. Nothing is going in. Nothing is going in. No medicine, no beds, no food, no water since March. As the Israeli invasion of Gaza City advances, oh yeah, they're being invaded, and they had leaflets dropped on them telling them to go to the south. 1 million people allegedly. All right, and a lot of them are not able. They were running for their lives. I was showing video last week about that. Al-Shifa Hospital is facing severe shortages of essential medical supplies, leaving patients untreated and vulnerable. Staff and patients fear an imminent Israeli attack. And again, this was 3 days ago from Tareq Hajjaj over at Mondoweiss, which is again an Indie Media Award honoring outlet. Okay, that's the scene of one of the operating rooms. You have no mattress. That's literally just a patient laying on a spring frame. Buckets, blood on the floor. You think that's sanitary? Horrible. In Gaza City, as the Israeli army is taking more steps to reach and occupy the heart of the city, and the number of casualties rise, and they keep dropping buildings left and right. All eyes are once again on the one hospital that used to be the largest and most qualified for such times, Al-Shifa in Gaza City. Since October of 2023, the Israeli army has stormed and destroyed Al-Shifa more than once. Still, the health ministry in Gaza managed to rebuild some sections and provide medical care to people in one of the places most subjected to ongoing Israeli bombing, Gaza City. But with the Israeli army's recent advance into Gaza City, fears are once again rising of yet another Israeli invasion of the hospital. On top of that, Al-Shifa, along with other hospitals in Gaza, is facing a critical shortage of medical supplies, blood units, staff beds, and essential medical devices. No big deal, right? It's disgraceful the way that these people are being treated. These are bloody days. So not only are you bombing them and destroying them, you're not even providing them with the supplies so that they can get themselves well. Because they're literally trying to kill them. These are bloody days, says Dr. Hussam Al-Shair, medical director at Al-Shifa Hospital, at least right now, until Israel targets him too, unfortunately, and either kidnaps or murders him and his family, which is what they've done to too many of these doctors. In recent days, over 60 people have been carried to the hospital dead, and over 175 injuries arrive at the hospital daily, most of them in critical condition and in need of surgeries and intensive care units. We only have 4 operational rooms in the hospital. In 8 waves daily, Al-Shair describes, casualties and martyrs come to the hospital, with each wave holding at least 30 people dead and wounded. Well, we're struggling due to the Israeli siege and the war, okay? But inside Al-Shifa, our mission is healthcare, and we will provide it until the last moment that we can. That's heroes. I mean, look at the waiting room. It looks like a bus terminal. Al-Shifa Hospital has struggled to fully recover following Israel's previous attempts on the hospital. Oh, assaults. I'm sorry, not attempts. Assaults on the hospital. And of course, they murdered journalists right in front of it, too. Currently, the hospital only has 4 operation rooms and 32 ICU beds, but it receives over 800 people daily. I don't know. They don't have bandages. They don't have. I don't know. The extreme shortage we have is in operational rooms. We have so many waiting operations, and the ICU is always full. And there are 20 premature babies in the NICU. Of course there are, because the mothers have been malnourished for 6 months. So these are all NICU babies. And they're all getting delivered prematurely. And again, 20 isn't even that many. He expresses his fear about the medical staff who also witnessed the extreme danger. Of course they do. We're scared for our security. Yesterday, the Israeli army assassinated someone at the hospital's doors, which was a critical danger for all of us as we're working in the hospital. Yeah, I think so. We've lost 30% of our staff, and some were killed, others detained or wounded. We also have a shortage of working personnel. According to Dr. Al-Shayir, there are 562 patients currently in the hospital and over 50 in need of critical surgeries who are waiting their turn. Daily, dozens of patients get treatment on the 32 dialysis machines. That's enough for all of Gaza City, for everybody left? While it's a daily struggle to treat patients and secure the necessary medical supplies, Al-Shayir's primary concern now is what will happen if Al-Shifa once again becomes the target of Israel's military assault on Gaza City. I think it already has, when they're shooting people in the doorway. If the Israeli army evacuates the hospital, inevitable deaths will be faced by so many patients, such as those in the ICU, NICU, and patients with renal failure. Don't tell them that. Don't tell them that. We're facing the invasion of the city with a shortage of water and food for the patients and workers in the hospital. They must have some crazy amounts of reserves because we know that no supplies have gone in for months. So where's this all coming from? That's the outside of the building that they're working in. That's the hospital. Left empty after staff were forced to evacuate on September 25th. This is 3 days ago. Inside the hospital, where most beds are coverless, like we saw, only the floor is used for patients to lie down on, and some of the beds are in a field medical tent set up outside the hospital to receive casualties. Patients are living with the shortage of medical supplies. Of course they are. They're directly impacted as their wounds get worse instead of healing. They describe the situation as desperate, where even water, either to drink or to use for bathing, is unavailable. It's a really tough situation. Patients are lying down in every corner on the ground. There's no beds, no treatment, no medication. We can't even find gauze for our wounds, a patient in the hospital said. I'm injured in my back after I got shot by an explosive. If I was treated on time, I'd be well by now, but so far I'm waiting to get surgery. So this patient says that he and other patients are suffering in the hospital instead of receiving the necessary treatment. There's no medication, water, or food. The doctors come to check on us and stand helpless because they can't give us anything. Well, at least he has a mattress, maybe. Well, there's a sheet. Days ago, he says a group of Israeli special forces got close, sending panic throughout the hospital and causing some patients' wounds to open again in the commotion. Other patients like him, who are currently unable to walk, were lying there, unable to move, waiting for death. Isn't that nice? And fuck Israel. Despite the imminent dangers facing the staff and patients at Al-Shifa, the hospital remains standing miraculously, and the staff are refusing to leave their posts and evacuate because they're heroes. Though the hospital has yet to receive an official evacuation order from the Israeli military, staff says it's only a matter of time. We've been besieged inside this hospital before, and at that time the Israeli army evacuated us by force. But this time, we're unaware of the Israeli plans for us. We have no idea what comes next, but for us, we are medical teams, and we have nothing to do with military activities. We've been here since the beginning of the war, and we will stay. I mean, wow. There's also I read a thing about how Doctors Without Borders pulled their medical staff from inside Gaza City because of the dangers and the imminent bombing that's likely to come. Wow. So, fuck Israel for that. I did want to point out one potential BDS win shared by a friend of the network, kind of, but somebody I'm a fan of on Substack notes, Ayuba Ahmad. Microsoft blocked Israel's use of its technology in mass surveillance of Palestinians. Now, I don't know how legit this is. Again, this might be a little bit of closing the barn door after the horse is already out of the barn and running around. But according to The Guardian, the extraordinary decision by Microsoft to end Israel's spy agency access to key technology was made amid pressure from employees and investors over its work for Israel's military and the role of its technology in almost the 2-year genocide in Gaza. So that's a good thing that they've stopped doing that. I also learned that Starbucks has decided to close over 100 locations nationwide. And my guess is that's because things are not going so great over there as well. So there's a couple of BDS wins. Hurting them in their wallet is the only thing that really they feel. I genuinely feel that way. And we've got to continue that kind of mindset, which is, voting with our wallets and being mindful of our purchase decisions and what those companies serve. In some cases, you can't avoid it, but wherever possible. So I also wanted to bring this story from Kit Knightley of Off Guardian, also Indie Media Award honorees. All right, we're going with a lot of Indie Media Award honorees tonight, but everyone is still suddenly recognizing Palestine. But why? Yes, Golden Monarch, Microsoft is still the bad guy, MK. That's correct. Let me move that over here since there's no Reef tonight. I don't know where Reef is. His internet apparently crashed, so he's not here, and it's just me flying solo, covering the stuff that I curated. So I want to talk about Kit Knightley over at Off Guardian. He talked about how everyone is suddenly recognizing Palestine. What does that mean? And why? What's happening here? In the past 48 hours, again, Off Guardian is a great independent outlet. They're censored all over the place. Go support them. Kit's a member of the Independent Media Alliance as well. He's attended some of the panels. I think they're scheduled to do another one soon. In the past 48 hours, the governments of France, San Marino, Luxembourg, Monaco, Andorra, Malta, the UK, Canada, Portugal, and Australia have all announced their recognition of the state of Palestine. It is the greatest number of countries to make this move in the same year since 1988. And they all did it over a long weekend. Why? Is it because it's a total coincidence? The elected officials of all those countries decided that they had been wrong for decades? Is it because the political pressure from a largely pro-Palestine public was just too much? Is it because they truly want peace and believe this is the way to achieve it? Does any of that sound likely? Yeah, no. In Italy, one of the global minority that has yet to recognize Palestine, we're told that mass protests over the weekend were demanding action over Gaza. In his address to the United Nations announcing the move, Emmanuel Macron said, "We can no longer wait, but wait for what?" He also repeated his call for a UN peacekeeping force to be deployed on the ground. Somebody standing between the Palestinian people and the IDF bombing them. Yes, please. Although UN peacekeeping troops are not necessarily the ones I would want doing it, because they've been in Lebanon for a while and not really doing very much to stop that. Israel has been happily colluding in its own bad guy image with illegal strikes on Doha, the capital of Qatar, earlier this month. We covered that. And the alleged killing of 31 journalists in Yemen. Alleged? I don't think they're alleged. Not to mention the Israeli finance minister's gleefully evil declaration of a real estate bonanza in Gaza when the bombing is finally over. Even the U.S. is more shakily behind Israel than usual, okay, with Trump's administration publicly questioning their airstrikes on Qatar after they approved them, and articles in the American press calling it a crossing a line in the U.S. can't ignore. Yeah. In his UNGA address just an hour ago or so, the one where they cut off the teleprompter, Trump called for the Gaza war to end immediately. The Economist published this piece 5 days ago, headlining "America is falling out of love with Israel." Well, maybe the citizens are, but the business leaders really aren't much, and the politicians and donor class certainly isn't. It was only last week that the UN Commission officially found that Israel was conducting genocide in Gaza, amazingly so, and the General Assembly endorsed a two-state solution, which is embarrassingly pathetic. Writing for the BBC, the Bibi Netanyahu C, Paul Adams claims that their isolation is deepening. Their isolation? Whose isolation? It's the US, UK, and Israel together, because they're all in it together. Seems like the worm is turning, no? But to what end? Where does the story go from here? Well, I'm going to show you. Macron's call for a UN force may be the key. Indonesia's president has claimed that they could supply 20,000 peacekeepers if needed. In the U.S., House Democrats have called for UN peacekeepers to protect aid convoys, though they frame that as protecting the aid reaching Hamas. It's clearly the same agenda. You're just literally setting up American soldiers to be murdered and UN peacekeepers. Meanwhile, EU chief Ursula von der Leyen has pledged the creation of a Palestine donor group, a special fund for rebuilding Gaza's infrastructure. All right. Maybe a shiny new state is the goal. Pried out of Israel's grasp, policed by a new international brigade, and rebuilt with UN and EU money into a model sustainable utopia. A shining beacon of international cooperation, maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be highly surprised. Kit clearly does not watch this show. What's happening is that, first of all, Israel is accelerating annexation amid statehood recognition moves. So, why are they doing that? To basically warn Israel that you better get your shit together and get this done with, or we're going to have to do something. And even once they do, who knows what they're going to do? Yeah, what say you, Mr. American Ambassador Mike Huckabee? I would say that he's staunchly on the side of Israel, sadly. It's embarrassing because he's a Christian Zionist, a fundamentalist end times Christian Zionist. There's the monster Smotrich, where he's talking about the resumption of settlement plans from August 14th. And again, this is from the Electronic Intifada, yet another Indie Media Award honoree. Again, indiemediaawards.substack.com. All right, you can find bios and links to subscribe to all of these outlets, by the way, in one place. As several Western countries formally recognize Palestine as a state, the Israeli government is accelerating its de facto annexation of the occupied West Bank. What a surprise. The statehood recognition announcements made in recent days by the United Kingdom, France, Canada, Australia, Portugal, and other states have prompted top Israeli officials, including the finance, economy, and national security ministers, to openly demand formal annexation of the occupied West Bank. They've already been tearing it up and displacing and taking over section by section, street by street. The, quote, only response to this anti-Israel move is sovereignty over the homeland of the Jewish people in the West Bank and removing the idea of a Palestinian state from the agenda once and for all. No, it's not. It's going to be a one-state Palestine, but it ain't the one-state Palestine you guys are imagining, I'll tell you right now. Said Beelzebub Smotrich, who wields a substantial authority over the building of his illegal settlements and demolition of Palestinian homes in the West Bank, which he said on Twitter a week ago. Murderous douchebag. He should be in The Hague, locked up in prison for all the genocide that he's already perpetrated. In reality, Israel is already engaged in a series of aggressive measures taken over the past few years and in line with long-standing Israeli policies of land theft and systematic erasure of Palestine, ongoing since 1948 and prior. But this didn't start October 7th. Okay, this didn't start 1948. Didn't start in the Six-Day War. All right. For his part, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Milikowski, a.k.a. Netanyahu, because he changed his name to sound more Israeli, declared that no Palestinian state would emerge and that illegal settlement building in the occupied territory would continue. Because nobody's stopping him. The minute somebody actually stops him, the minute the money stops, the minute the weapons stop, the minute UN peacekeeping troops start going in there, or somebody says no, China stops shipping goods, nobody's stopping this. For many in the West Bank, while recognition and public expressions of support for Palestine can be helpful in the long run, they remain highly critical. Yes, 100 Palestinians are being killed every single day in Gaza. That's more important than recognition, said Omar Asaf, a political activist in Ramallah, told the EI. This recognition decision is more symbolic in political weight than any real effect on the ground. While we welcome it, what's required today is to stop the genocide, starvation, and destruction. It's window dressing. There must also be a comprehensive end to settlement expansion, fragmentation of Palestinians, and the transformation of the West Bank into countless prisons. Okay, he's been imprisoned himself by both Israel and the Palestinian Authority, of course, because they are subservient to Israel in many ways. And they volunteered last week to say, hey, guys, we'll take over Gaza. There's never been the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. They must also stop the forcible displacement of Palestinians in the northern West Bank. And the Palestinian Authority is not stopping that either, motherfuckers. Statehood recognition, many said, must be followed up with real actions such as sanctions and an arms embargo against Israel. Amen. Meanwhile, fear and anxiety of the next chapter under Israel's violent occupation plagues every Palestinian in the West Bank. Agreed, too. We need to turn them into a total pariah state and support the Palestinian people at the same time. I'm afraid that with and without the recognitions, what's happening in the occupied West Bank is horrific, Masya Yassin told EI from the streets of Ramallah. We don't have to imagine what the future will look like because we're already living it every day. Remember, there's no Hamas there. No Hamas there. Citing terrorist settlers who are killing people, stealing land, and cutting off roads. Quote, all Palestinians here are besieged with gates at the entrances to their cities and villages in open-air prisons. The army enters at any moment, kills, injures, expels. Israel has been pursuing annexation and land theft policies in the West Bank and Gaza since it occupied the areas in 1967. But after the start of the genocide in Gaza, there have been record rates of Palestinian land stolen, villages erased, residents expelled, and new illegal settlements built. all achieved through the violence of the military occupation and attacks by settler militias, armed and aided by the government to silently do the dirty work, pogroms, with the IDF soldiers standing behind the people as they burn down the houses. Fuck Israel. On September 23rd, Israeli settlers shot dead Saeed Nassan, 20 years old. Why? In the village of Al-Mughayr in northeast Ramallah, the 12th Palestinian to be killed by settlers since the start of 2025. The first killing took place in June. They also recovered burned down Issa Amro's fields and had children threatening to murder him and celebrating the death of his brother. Disgusting. 12-year-old kids. Brainwashed. Gross. Anyone who celebrates that can fuck off and get the hell out of my stream. In response to increasing global isolation, particularly over the last few months, Israel has doubled down on its confinement and violent oppression of Palestinians in the West Bank by increasing the number of military closures and roadblocks, as well as its daily deadly raids. People in the United States deny that this shit is happening. It is happening. It actually is happening. To deny that is to deny these people's existence and reality. It's the grossest thing you can do, because it literally costs you nothing to acknowledge their existence, and you won't even give them that courtesy. These are human fucking beings. It's also taking concrete steps towards formal annexation with a publicly stated aim of preventing a Palestinian state, which we cannot allow. Again, that is erasure. I don't want to quote Smotrich. He's disgusting. You can read his statements. On 16th of September, the Israeli military installed a new iron gate at the entrance to the town of Al-Izariah in eastern Jerusalem. This road is the only access point for millions of Palestinians traveling between the north and south of the occupied West Bank. The closure of this gate would, within seconds, sever the northern and central West Bank from the south. Another corridor. All right. The installation comes as part of the revival of the long-stalled E1 settlement project, which, when completed, would effectively bisect the occupied West Bank and undermine territorial contiguity. Wow, that's a tough word for me to say. In the West Bank or any Palestinian state. They want to split it in half and balkanize that too, and put a settlement in between them, with no way for them to get between them. Separate. If you got a cousin that lived on the other side of town, I don't know if you can ever get to him. Smotrich made no bones about the Israeli government's motivation when formally announcing the resumption of the plan on August 14th. It buries the very idea of a Palestinian state, not in documents, not in decisions or declarations, but in facts. But buildings can also be leveled, as Israel is proving on a daily basis. All right. The E1 area, a critical stretch of land between Jerusalem and Jericho to the east, functions as one of the last remaining corridors connecting the northern and southern occupied West Bank, as they continue to steal the rest of the land. It's also one of the final areas of territorial continuity connecting Jerusalem with the rest of the occupied West Bank. Israel intends to empty these areas of Palestinians and render them only accessible to settlers. That's ethnic cleansing. The transfer of an occupying power's civilian population into the territory that it occupies is a violation of international humanitarian law, the law of armed conflict, i.e. a war crime. Yep. At least 7,000 Bedouins living across 22 different villages will be expelled and rendered homeless as their homes are systematically demolished. The Israeli military already issued dozens of new demolition orders between the 12th and 14th of August, targeting Palestinian Bedouin villages located within that E1 zone. They've been targeted with systematic harassment and demolitions for decades. Then we go back to between January 2023 and mid-July of this year, at least 2,800 Palestinians, almost 2,900, from 69 different villages across the West Bank, primarily Bedouin, were forcibly displaced due to the coercive environment of intensifying settler attacks and movement restrictions. Where do these people go? They're intentionally creating homeless people in desperate situations. Palestinian Bedouins are on the front lines of Israel's violent annexation due to their residing in open areas outside of population centers and being at the direct mercy of the Israeli occupying force and settlers. Annexation is rapidly becoming a reality for all Palestinians. In Area C, in 60% of the West Bank, all we see are Israeli flags, Israeli police, Israeli civil defense, settlers moving freely. Palestinians have come to feel that it's dangerous to move around between cities and villages. In the case of formal annexation, the lives of residents across many villages in the occupied West Bank, particularly those heavily besieged by illegal settlers, will either become so unbearable that residents will be forced to leave and move to the cities, or settlers will expel them by force. Yes, burn down their houses, raze them to the ground, and potentially murder the inhabitants. Zeha Al Tahhan is an independent writer and TV reporter based in occupied in Jerusalem. Again, the EI is an Indie Media Award-winning outlet. Fuck Israel every day. And I don't even know what you say anymore because I'm beyond fuck Israel. And I got a bunch more here. So let's go to People's Dispatch and let's hide Reef from here. Hey, make that disappear. Reef's name badge. Turn that off. There we go. All right. Million-strong general strike. Okay, we got a little bit of good news here. And again, Kit Knightley was calling it allegedly. It wasn't allegedly. It happened. Million-strong general strike blocks Italy for Palestine. 1 million people across Italy, led by grassroots unions, took part in a general strike supporting Palestine and the global Flotilla, which we're going to talk about in a minute because I figured it's a nice segue into the flotilla. Okay, so this is an article again from People's Dispatch. I think I found it in Popular Resistance or Sheer Post. But on September 22nd, approximately 1 million people across Italy, crazy, staged a general strike in support of Palestine and the global Flotilla, offering a vision of solidarity sharply at odds with the one displayed by European leaders at the UN these days. Ports, train stations, and major junctions were shut down as workers, many of whom were members of the grassroots union, Union Sindacale de Base, okay, the USB, brought the country to a halt. In Rome alone, 300,000, I don't know how they count these numbers, but 300,000 demonstrators occupied the city's main railway hub before marching through the streets. The call came from Genoa's dock workers, and here we are. We've blocked everything. That's great. Okay? First responders will never be complicit in genocide, and we're protesting a government that's entrapping us in rearmament. So it's not just about Palestine either. Earlier this month, as the global Flotilla prepared to launch, members of the Dock Workers Collective in Genoa vowed to halt port operations if Israel attacked or blocked the fleet. Weeks later, following continuous local mobilizations and public assemblies, they made good on their promise. Thousands shut down Genoa's port from the early morning hours, joined by workers in the strategic harbors of Trieste, Venice, and Livorno. Rallies erupted in Bologna, Milan, Turin, Naples, across Sicily and Sardinia, and in dozens of other localities where teachers and parents and students walked out of schools together, chanting for a free Palestine. That's incredible. Man, I wish that would happen here. Speaking from the Genoa blockade, Marta of the left party, Potere al Popolo, stressed that while the strike demonstrated concrete solidarity with Palestinians, affirmed support for their legislative resistance, and denounced European complicity in genocide. Embargo and sanctions, these must be our priorities, meaning that we can't stop here. Authorities responded to the massive mobilization with violence. What a surprise. When you withhold your labor, the state comes after you with violence. Police forces used water cannons against protesters, demanding an end to Italy's arms trade with Israel, agreed, and calling for severing all political and economic ties. Love to see that happen. Despite growing public pressure, the fascist Giorgia Meloni's government has refused to act against Israel, instead continuing communications with Israeli officials and arms deliveries throughout the state-linked company Leonardo. All right, look at, the videos and the images are stunning. The fact that they're actually written in Italian leads me to believe that they're genuine and not, like a color revolution led by CIA, etc., to try to destabilize the country. Only days before the strike, Infrastructure and Transport Minister Matteo Salvini, leader of the far-right Lega, appeared in an interview with Israeli media in which he supported Israel's right to build itself a serene future, as occupation forces inflicted even more destruction upon Gaza City. In its campaign to build a serene future, Israel has killed at least 65,000 Palestinians in Gaza, including over 1,000 health workers and hundreds of journalists. While some government figures signaled mild unease about recent attacks, Salvini set out his allegiance in very clear terms, quote, defending Israel's right to exist is complicated right now, but friends are revealed in the most difficult moments. Yeah, and you're not one of them. In some strike locations, protesters signaled out Salvini's statements in their speeches. In Venice, they sent what they termed a special message to a special enemy, insisting that their loyalty was with Palestinians under attack and that their energy committed to building international solidarity. Okay. The mass character of Monday's strike likely shook much of Italy's political class. In recent years, the government had passed measures to restrict demonstrations and downplay the organizing capacity of trade unions and the left. Yet, weeks of continuous protests, culminating in the general strike, undermined these efforts. So, even though it's illegal, and even though they're trying to do everything to stop them, somehow these people in Italy pulled it off. Workers have returned the center stage and are calling on citizens, all citizens, to stand up. They're not doing so for a contract renewal, but to demand justice for a distant and tormented people. In this age of selfishness and individualism, this seems unthinkable, but no, solidarity between peoples and brotherhood beyond borders are not dead and buried values. On the contrary, they are alive and kicking. Inject this into my fucking veins. All right? For Potere al Popolo's Giuliano Granato, the strike also captured broader anger. Quote, Palestine has given a name to our discontent. I don't like kind of doing that, actually, but okay. All right. The outrage, protests, and anger over the massacre of the Palestinian people has intersected with years of oppression, repression, and deteriorating material conditions here. For young people in particular, there is the absence of a future, fear, and the awareness of living in societies where only the horrendously rich and powerful have a say. Yeah. The momentum built by the strike is set to continue. Italian dock workers will host an international sectoral meeting on September 26th and 27th, bringing together trade unions, capable of disrupting Europe's arms flows to Israel, which they've said they would block. National demonstrations in solidarity with Palestine are also planned for October 4th, as eyes remain fixed on the global Samud flotilla. If Israel attempts to stop it, Italian workers have already shown that they are ready to block the country, sending a signal that could inspire others to organize along the same lines. I sure hope so, man. I'll tell you, I'll say it. I've been calling for a general strike for years, and I would still love to see it. All right. And I also wanted to bring this from BettBeat, and I'm not going to be able to read through this whole thing because I still have a bunch more. But BettBeat wrote that Italy's rage for Gaza must spread. All right. That what we witness in Gaza is not merely the extermination of a people, it's a laboratory experiment in mass psychological conditioning, a blueprint for how ruling elites will subjugate populations worldwide when their time comes to be discarded. We are all Gaza, because at some point we will all be Gaza, is what he's saying. All right. The ruling class understands what most of us refuse to acknowledge. Gaza is not an aberration, but a preview. The same forces that rain death on Palestinian children today will turn their weapons on any population that threatens their power tomorrow. You saw what Trump is talking about doing. The silence of governments, the complicity of institutions, the careful neutrality of those who pride themselves on moral clarity. All of this serves a purpose beyond Palestine. It establishes the parameters of acceptable suffering. All right. As the activist and writer Susan Abdul-Hawa explains, quote, the process follows a predictable pattern, one that has been refined through decades of implementation. First, commit an atrocity that shocks the conscience. Allow the outrage to build. Let millions march in the streets. Let them believe their voices matter. Then escalate. Do something even more horrific. Something that makes the previous atrocity seem restrained by comparison. Watch as protests fade, as people retreat into private anguish, as the sense of powerlessness takes hold. We saw this with Iraq, where millions flooded the streets in opposition to an illegal war. The machine ignored them and proceeded anyway. Then came Libya and Syria and Yemen, each intervention more brazen than the last, each met with diminishing resistance. By the time Gaza arrived, the conditioning was already complete. The world had learned its lesson. Nothing you will do will make them stop. This isn't by accident, but by design. Go read the rest of this article over at BettBeat Media, BettBeat.substack.com. I love those guys. Go give them a follow. Go support them. Go read the rest of this article over there. I did want to dedicate some time also to Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya because we got an update about him and it wasn't great. Ryan Rosbiani, I'm sure many of you know him, follow him over on Twitter, published this the other day. Breaking an update on the doctor after 276 days in captivity. We've literally been talking about this man all year and how he's been tortured and imprisoned. A lawyer from Physicians for Human Rights Israel finally visited him today after 4 denied attempts. Dr. Abu Safiya has been detained for 276 days under inhumane conditions. He's lost over 25 kilograms due to deliberate starvation. He's been subjected to continuous torture and physical assaults along with other healthcare workers. He's been denied medical treatment despite suffering from scabies and pre-existing heart disease, and never brought before a judge and not informed of any legal reason for his detention since March. He stated, "My only crime is being a doctor." Over 100 doctors and nurses are being punished, treating Gaza's wounded. The family calls on international organizations, human rights groups, and the global community to act urgently to secure the release of Dr. Abu Safiya and all detained healthcare workers. Again, a war crime. A war crime. This man was treating patients And he walked out and voluntarily walked into the tank. We've got the picture of him standing in front of that tank. And they've tortured him for 9 months plus. So I wrote, free this doctor immediately, because Robin R. Qureshi, who's over on Substack, give her a follow, published an article at her publication, at her newsletter. It's been all year long, plus several days. He's been tortured, held for way too long, and had treatment withheld by the most moral army in the world, right? Who's been murdering all the other doctors in Gaza since kidnapping and imprisoning Dr. Abu Safiya. This is just so disgusting, and there are so few speaking out, so thank you for those who are. And she published an article to her Substack called Bearing Witness. This is robinqureshi.substack.com. Again, all these links will be in the article over at indiemediatoday.com about the live stream, all the links to everything that I'm showing you tonight. But this is a recap of everything that we just talked about here, with links to several petitions and online petitions from Amnesty International to Doctors Without Borders. All right, this recaps his entire story. This is a great article to share with people that kind of talks about who he is. All right, he was born November 21st in Jabalia. He became director of Kamal Adwan Hospital in February of 2024 after having worked there in other roles, but they already had killed the director of the hospital, I believe. It was already under repeated Israeli siege and shelling. So again, this just recaps everything that's happened here with in bullet point format. I hate using that phrase. All right. A lot of data here. Here are some questions. Why is Israel detaining a hospital director and other medical personnel without charge, trial, or due process? How do they justify torturing and starving doctors while the genocide in Gaza depends on their absence from hospitals? Why has the world tolerated Israel's systematic destruction of Gaza's health system and the criminalization of medical care? How can governments claim to uphold international law while arming and funding Israel as it imprisons doctors and kills them? What accountability will be imposed on Israel for the torture and deaths of medical staff in custody, including Dr. Al-Idyad al-Rantisi and Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, tortured and murdered in captivity? Why is the protection of Palestinian medical workers being abandoned in full view of the world? How long will the international community remain complicit while Israel uses prisons, famine, and bombardment as tools of extermination? So then you have petitions open internationally. You've got Amnesty International. You've got Action Network. You've got Code Pink. You've got Change.org. You've got Med Global. And all of those are linked here. And follow R. Qureshi over on Substack as well on Notes, and subscribe to Bearing Witness. I got one more thing here about that, and that is the actual statement from Physicians for Human Rights Israel. I've heard a lot of things, and I just wanted to make sure that she had the statement right. So I grabbed it, and I found their Twitter account, or actually refound it. Credit to Reef on that one. And he shared this thread that Dr. Abu Safiya described the violence perpetrated by prison guards during frequent cell searches. According to him, detainees receive very small amounts of food. Many of them have lost a significant amount of weight, and they've been held in dirty clothes for months. Dr. Abu Safiya requested to be examined by a doctor because of scabies and heart problems, but his request was ignored. He takes regular medication for high blood pressure, but he testified that he has not been examined by an IPS doctor since his arrest. He's remained in the same clothes since his arrest and did not receive a new set of clothes until the morning of his visit. 6 months have passed since the publishing of our report, which documented the arbitrary detention of more than 100 medical personnel from Gaza. Since the report's publication, our organization has visited more than 25 of them and gathered additional testimonies about ongoing physical violence, repeated cell raids, lack of food and medical treatment, and months of detention and dirty clothes. All detainees are currently being held without charge, some for more than a year, of course in violation of due process and in serious breach of the right to health of Gaza's population. Most moral army in the world, right? We demand the immediate release of all Palestinian healthcare workers detained unlawfully by Israel. Their detention serves no justice and directly undermines the right to health for the Palestinian population. It is imperative that the international community act to ensure their freedom, dignity, and ability to serve those in desperate need. Okay. Man, fuck Israel. I mean, just perpetrating the worst imaginable genocide and conditions on a civilian population. And then it's going to murder them on top of it. So we won't be remonetized for that last hour and change, I'm sure. So please support INN with a $5, $10, or however many dollar contribution, a tip over at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. You got Cash App, $, Indie News Network. You got paypal.me/Indie News Network. We're live over at IndieNewsNow.com, and you can actually get to the merch store over there too. There's a link at the top of navigation for merch. You can buy a shirt or a sticker or a beanie. Winter's coming up. Or over at Substack at IndieMediaToday.com, where we're live right now, or at INNNewsletter.com. The best people are hanging out here. So if you're able to, before we head out, support independent media, support these people. These people already did. I enjoy doing the show every Sunday night. I love you. I love you all, and I appreciate you all for putting up with me. And man, that was a long, ranting, depressing fuck Israel segment. I apologize. Lord, I apologize. But this is what's happening in the world, and we can't ignore it. There are too many outlets that just want to bury their head in the sand or only tell one part of the story, and we're not going to do that. I'm going to try to go to as many places as I can, bring as many trusted independent journalists, outlets, and opinions and perspective as we can, and we're going to keep doing this. So all right, I don't have any of his goodbye, although I do have this. No, we just fucking lost the stream. Night, everyone. Love you.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?